Why don't we move next to Dr. Phoumy Sayavong, who is with the Oakland Unified School District.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks to the campaign for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'm here to share a little bit of my own story and to give you a little more information about who the Southeast Asian American students are, because typically, as many of you have seen or heard, they get overemphasized by actually by not being seen or heard because of the statistics have been typically hidden through the common practice of categorizing all Americans of Asian descent into one category. So these Asians, when I refer to these students, are typically students from Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And for most of these students, they and their families have been in the U.S. for the past 30 years. And so it's a really short period of time, I guess, in the history of education. But so just imagine the impact of what that would have, considering where their parents have come from. So typically their parents left their homes for to escape from political persecution from the communist government. So this is around the Vietnam War era. And these parents, and especially and many of the young kids, are mostly farmers and small business owners, soldiers, especially those who have the most reason to fear for their lives because they were strongly sought after. And about half of these people who actually came to the U.S. were young kids, innocent young kids. So those who fled mostly were villagers with very limited educational experience, especially from Cambodia, who were the educated, were actually sought after and murdered during the Khmer Rouge regime. So imagine those who managed to make it to this country, the trauma they brought with them and the kind of history they brought with them. But unfortunately, it's that piece of their history that's typically forgotten. Not just by the general public or by the educators, but also now by their kids. So before I move on, I just want to give you a little scenario of my own history because of what it was actually like, and to be a Southeast Asian, to be an English language learner, and to be put in those types of classes through the school systems. My first experience in the U.S. School was at the age of 8, and that's when I arrived from Laos. So a week after that, I was enrolled into a school nearby, and for the first week or so, there was no form of communication because I didn't speak English and nobody else spoke Lao. It was one day where the administrator was desperate in trying to, I guess, get some kind of communication through, so they brought in their most known expert, and it turned out to be a 4th grader who was Lao, but she spoke no Lao. So that was my initial experience. And soon after that, I was moved from school to school to school. So in my K-12 experience, well, I didn't even enter at K, but I entered in the 2nd grade. But in my experience, I had gone through 7 different schools, for the most part as an EL student. English as a second language was the norm for my academic experience. And for the most part, I didn't know any other options. Teachers were telling me that I did well. I spoke good English. My grades were high. And yet, I kept going through the system as an ESL student. And so it wasn't until 8th grade that I transitioned out. I don't know exactly why, but I did get transitioned out. And in my high school years, though, I mean, again, it's year after year of the same experience. So even though I got through high school, it wasn't until 10th grade. I mean, up until 10th grade, I was still in remedial classes. And just to give you an example of what happens in those types of classes, I would come in, the teacher would assign, I don't know, more than half of the class time just, to do silent reading, and then memorize 10 words, for a quiz on Thursdays. And that would happen for the first quarter of my 10th grade. So needless to say, man, I didn't learn a whole lot. So it wasn't the administrators, the teachers, my teacher, my English teacher, or my parents who who realized that I didn't belong in those types of classes. And I definitely didn't realize it because, again, for me, that was the norm. That was how I arrived. That was how I was taught, and that was how I learned. So it turned out it was actually my friends, my other Southeast Asian students who recognized that I didn't really belong in there. So although it was late in my academic career, I was transitioned out and actually entered my first honors English class. And then from then on, I mean, it may seem lucky at the time that my friends had made that recommendation, but still, I mean, the time after that was quite a struggle because just imagine having to catch up to all those years that I've missed. So that's just, I mean, if you can imagine that, that's one nightmare, of a story to have gone through. But for the millions of other Southeast Asians, that may be more common than we think. I mean, I can't tell you because I don't know. And most people won't know because, again, the numbers have been invisible. So it's very difficult to get at these types of stories because students are going through the system without being seen or heard. So going back to the educational progress of Southeast Asians, again, has been generally overlooked just because of the common practice, again, of categorizing these many subgroups of students of Asian descent into one category. And so just in the U.S., in 2005, the American Community Survey estimates the population of Cambodians, Laotians, and Vietnamese to be over 2.1 million in this country. And so, I mean, the numbers are quite high, and yet, again, when they get categorized with other Asians, they tend to get ignored.